Once a stray cat, always a stray cat, Father proclaimed. I tore up their cruise tickets and invited Margaret instead. After seeing our photographs, he sent 37 messages to my telegraph. I stood motionless, staring at the letter in my hand. My first real commission payment. Figures I'd never seen associated with my name before. The weight of possibility pressed against my fingertips, my throat tightening. After everything, the sanitarium, the skepticism, the disappointed glances, I'd done it. I'd finally done it. I ran my fingers over the publisher's emblem embossed in the corner, evidence that someone believed in my writing enough to invest in my future, unlike my parents who'd only ever invested in cataloging my failures. The idea struck me suddenly, a grand gesture, a way to show them I'd changed, to make them proud, finally proud. My hand trembled as I booked passage on the SS Mariposa, a 7-day voyage to the Hawaiian Islands, the kind of journey they'd always dreamed of but could never justify. The kind of trip successful children arranged for their parents. I pictured Father's face when I'd present the tickets, the way his perpetual scowl might soften into something resembling admiration, perhaps even love. I reserved a table at their favorite establishment, the place they'd only frequented for special anniversaries, or when relations visited from the countryside, not the kind of place they'd expect their problem child to afford. My chest fluttered with nervous anticipation. This was the moment everything would change. I arrived early, checked my appearance in the lavatory mirror countless times, straightened my cravat, smoothed my hair, practiced my smile until it felt almost natural. They arrived precisely 10 minutes late, Father checking his pocket watch, as if already calculating how soon they could depart. Mother's lips pressed tightly, her default expression when dealing with me. "William," Father acknowledged. Not hello, not pleased to see you, just my name, a simple statement of fact. Mother leaned in for our customary cheek touch, not quite a kiss. The scent of her lavender water, the same she'd worn since I was a child, wrapped around me like a familiar straitjacket. "This is unexpected," she settled into her chair, eyes darting around the restaurant as if searching for the punchline to a joke. I'd rehearsed this moment for days, but now with them sitting across from me, all my careful words evaporated. I wanted to celebrate. My voice sounded smaller than I'd planned. "I received the commission." Father raised an eyebrow, his disbelief palpable. "The publishing house?" he clarified. "The one you corresponded with last season?" I nodded, reaching for my water glass to quiet the tremor in my hands. "Well," he exchanged a look with Mother I couldn't quite interpret. "That's surprising." Not congratulations, not well done. Just surprising, as if my success was a statistical anomaly rather than an achievement. "I received my first payment today," I pressed on. Mother's expression shifted subtly, interest flickering behind her careful composure. "Oh?" She took a delicate sip of water. "And you haven't spent it all already on your usual habits." The weight of her implication crushed against my chest. 3 years sober meant nothing in their eyes. I would always be the morphine addict, the disappointment, the stray cat. "I'm clean, Mother. 3 years now." My rehearsed smile felt like a grimace. "William," Father cut in, his voice dropping to that familiar patronizing tone. "Let's be realistic. We've trodden this path before. The promises, the fresh start speeches." My carefully constructed fantasy cracked, hairline fractures spreading across its surface. "It's different this time." The desperation in my voice disgusted me. "I've been following the doctor's regimen. I haven't—" "How much?" Mother interrupted, placing her napkin precisely in her lap. "Pardon?" "The payment," she clarified. "How much was it?" Of course, not how was the writing progressing, not what were my creative aspirations, just the dollar amount, the only measure of worth they understood. I told them, watched as their eyebrows raised in synchronized surprise. "Well," Father cleared his throat, That would just about cover what we spent on your last sanitarium stay. The air vanished from my lungs. Was that what this dinner represented to them? A collection notice? Your father's right, Mother nodded. Do you know what we might have done with those funds? The journeys we could have taken? Instead, we spent it trying to fix you. Fix me, like I was a broken timepiece, a malfunctioning machine that had failed to perform as expected. I didn't request your presence to discuss the sanitarium. My voice steadied, finding unexpected strength in the rubble of my shattered hopes. Then why the fancy dinner? To flaunt that you're finally doing what ordinary people do. Working? Supporting yourself? Father's voice rose slightly, drawing glances from nearby tables. Mother touched his arm, warning him about the public display, rather than the cruelty of his words. I looked at them. Really looked. The people who had given me life, but never figured out how to give me love without conditions attached. Once a stray cat, always a stray cat, Father sighed, shaking his head. We simply hope this commission endures longer than the others. My hand tightened around the envelope in my pocket, the cruise ticket suddenly burning against my thigh, the grand gesture now seeming pathetically naive. I need to visit the gentleman's room. I stood abruptly, nearly knocking over my water glass. In the sanctuary of the lavatory, I pulled out the envelope, the ornate brochure for the SS Mariposa, mockingly beautiful. 7 days of luxury I'd intended as a peace offering, a bridge back to their approval. But some bridges cannot be reconstructed. Some relationships cannot be repaired, simply because one side refuses to acknowledge the damage they've caused. I stared at my reflection, eyes clear after 3 years of sobriety, shoulders straighter, the shadow of the person I'd been still visible but fading with each passing day. Why was I still seeking validation from people who had decided who I was years ago, who refused to see any version of me beyond their carefully curated disappointment? I tore the envelope in half, then quarters, then eighths, watched the pieces flutter into the wastebasket like confetti for a celebration that would never occur. When I returned to the table, I wore a different kind of smile. Not the eager-to-please grin I'd practiced, but something calmer. Resolved. I must depart. I have an early morning appointment. I placed money on the table for my untouched meal. Thank you for coming. Mother blinked, confused by this unexpected departure from our usual script of me begging for approval and them withholding it. But we haven't even ordered yet, she protested. I've lost my appetite. I met Father's gaze directly. And I've already heard everything I needed to hear. I walked out of the restaurant with my back straight, each step carrying me further from the fantasy I'd clung to for too long. The night air felt cleansing, possibility stretching before me like an uncharted landscape. I pulled out my calling card and contacted Margaret, not my sister by blood but by choice, the person who had actually been present during the darkest days of recovery. They were terrible, weren't they? She answered without preamble, knowing exactly why I was calling. Worse than I anticipated, my voice cracked slightly. And I expected rather terrible. Come visit. I'll prepare hot chocolate with the little marshmallows, just as she had after my first week of sobriety, when the shaking wouldn't cease, when I thought I couldn't endure another night. I have a superior idea. I stared up at the stars, barely visible through the city lights. How do you feel about an ocean voyage? The SS Mariposa was everything the brochure promised. Pristine decks, crystal clear waters, staff who smiled like they actually meant it. I still cannot believe you brought me instead of your parents. Margaret stretched out on the deck chair beside me, her chestnut curls gleaming in the sunshine. I took a sip of my ridiculously elaborate tropical concoction, complete with paper umbrella and fruit garnish. The finest decision I've made in years. And it was true. 5 days into our voyage, and I hadn't dwelled on my parents' disappointment once. Well, almost once. You're different here, she observed, pushing her spectacles up to study my face more carefully. More yourself. I considered this. The tension that usually resided between my shoulder blades had disappeared. The constant need to check my pocket watch in case they required me, in case something went wrong, in case this was the time they finally noticed I'd changed, had faded. I believe I'm simply remembering who I was before I became their disappointment. Margaret reached over and squeezed my hand, understanding without needing further explanation. We spent 7 days without obligations or expectations. Swimming in water so clear you could see your shadow on the sandy bottom. Enjoying meals without calculating the emotional cost of each bite. Laughing without waiting for the other shoe to drop. On our final evening, we indulged in the ship's finest dining room. White tablecloths, candles, a string quartet playing softly in the corner. "We appear as though we belong here," I marveled, taking in our sun-kissed skin and relaxed smiles. "We do belong here," Margaret raised her wine glass. "To belonging wherever we damn well please." I clinked my glass against hers. "To choosing our own family." 3 weeks after our return, my telegraph exploded with notifications while I was meeting with my publisher. 42 missed communications, all from Father. My heart hammered against my ribs, the old panic rushing back. Had something occurred? Was someone injured? I stepped into the hallway to read the messages, each one more vitriolic than the last. Accusations, guilt trips, demands for explanations. It wasn't until the final message that I understood. Margaret sent us the photographs. "How could you afford passage on the Mariposa? Have you returned to your old ways? After everything we've sacrificed to get you clean?" The photographs, of course. Margaret had shared our vacation memories with mutual acquaintances. Father, ever vigilant for evidence of my failures, must have seen them. The happy moments captured and shared with innocent intent, now weaponized against me. With methodical precision, I severed all communication. No dramatic confrontation, no ceremony, just the quiet click of disconnection. A boundary finally established. Later that evening, Margaret and I reviewed our voyage photographs, dessert slowly melting in our bowls. "You appear happy here." She pointed to a sunset image of me gazing out at the ocean, profile gilded in golden light. I was. I studied the photograph, the relaxed set of my shoulders, the slight smile playing at the corners of my mouth. I am, even after today. I considered the question carefully. The hurt remained. The grief for the relationship I'd never had and never would. But alongside it, something else had taken root. Something that felt suspiciously like freedom. Yes, even after today. She leaned her head against my shoulder, comfortable silence stretching between us. "They might attempt to contact you again," she warned eventually. "When they realize you're serious about cutting them off." "Probably," I nodded, already anticipating the flying monkeys. The family friends who would call to inform me how devastated my parents were. The guilt trips delivered through third parties. "But I don't have to answer." "No," she agreed. "You don't. Family isn't always blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand beside you at your worst, who celebrate with you at your best, who see your flaws and love you not despite them but with them, integrated into the complex tapestry that makes you wholly yourself. To all of you struggling under the weight of expectations you could never meet, trying to earn love that should have been freely given, I wish you the courage to draw your boundaries, to recognize your worth, independent of others' assessment, to find the people who see you clearly and love you completely. The path isn't easy. The grief doesn't vanish overnight. But on the other side waits a kind of peace I never thought possible. A life built on my terms, filled with people who value me exactly as I am. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories that speak to the heart.